All right. Got a lot going on. Got a short time. I think the 7th is the last day of class. That's next week. And then following is the final. Final again is, I say again, the final will be open on the day of the final. Okay, look at the schedule. I'll tell you when that is. Don't have it on me right now. It'll be open for you to take. It will be graded automatically, just as normal, tests are, okay? You've gone through a lot of these quizzes, haven't you? I think I just put up another one. I know I just put up another one, okay? They're all just to really keep you accountable to the lectures. Make sure you saw them, okay? My hope, for those of you who didn't make every class like Noah did, is that as you go through those quizzes for the lectures that you weren't here for, that those help guide you through the lecture and actually help you pay attention to the lecture. That's my hope. I can't guarantee anything. My hope is that some of this will stick. Maybe not the particulars, but the method of and the approach to thinking, okay? That will help you think better. Just be better thinkers, okay? I'm a believer in truth, but I'm also a skeptic. Just because somebody famous says it, or says it from the classroom, or from the radio or the television, doesn't mean I believe them. Just because I love that person doesn't mean I believe them, okay? I believe it because it's true. It is not true because I believe it. Did you catch that? That's epistemology again. We're always going back to that. Okay, so right now we've been talking about metaphysics. We're asking the question, not of just what types of things exist, but what does it mean to be me? And in that realm, we are talking about the philosophy of mind. What do I mean by the word mind? Now, I discussed this the other day, that the Greek word is psyche, which means soul. The Greek word for mind is actually nous. Okay? We don't study noology, we study psychology. And I think they've changed it to mind because they don't like the religious connotations. Right? People want to be secular, non-religious. So they go, oh, if it has to do with religion, it must not be, quote, science, right? Well, science, as you know, I believe, can have a lot to do with religion. I do believe they cross paths and they don't cancel each other out, okay? They can talk to each other. That's my view, and many others' views. There are some atheists out there who don't believe that, okay? And unfortunately, there are also some theists who also believe that science and religion have nothing to say to each other. And I generally question their Christianity because they tend to favor one over the other. You got to favor one over the other. And which one are they favoring? Usually it's science at the expense of religion, okay? And so we ask epistemologically, which one should we believe in? Well, the science has a tendency to be very popular epistemologically, but it doesn't always yield true results, right? Most scientific theories are false. That's just the way it goes. I mean, not all scientific theories are true. Even giving examples, science and pharmacology. Can science answer all questions? Not yet. We're trying to cure cancer. Has it happened? We're trying to cure a common cold. Has it happened? How supreme is science in that regard? Now, I'm not saying that, we're going to go to theology to cure cancer overall. Eventually, God will, cure all things. Okay? That's a theological question. We're not trying to do it, so we keep them bracketed, but it doesn't mean you can't say, can God's existence be proved by use of certain scientific methodologies? I have no problem with that, right? Can the existence of Jesus be shown through archaeological evidence, which is science? Yes, it can. Can we carbon date certain artifacts that we find? Yes, we can. That are of biblical importance, relevance? Yes. See, they cross paths, right? So there's nothing weird about that. But then there are some things you just go, well, that doesn't answer that question. You got to take it one by one, right? Well, anyway, so we're going to be cruising here through metaphysics, asking what I am. And if we're talking about the soul, Some will believe it and some will not. Some will believe that the soul doesn't exist. Those people are naturalists. Naturalists believe that everything that exists is physical. This is all in the last lecture, by the way. An idealist will believe that the soul can exist, but the body doesn't exist, that the body is an illusion. Okay, because the idealist doesn't believe that the physical world exists. Okay? So the idealist will say, yeah, we experience properties, but we don't, what are the things that have properties? Once you take the hardness, the color, the size, the shape, right, out of everything, even atoms, once you take the properties away, you go, what do you have? It's called bundle theory. Some people believe that the existence of things, items, are nothing more than bundles of properties. Okay? When I talk about properties, I talk about the predicates of things. Do you remember me using that word, predicate? The descriptor of things like blueness, hardness, shape, color, size, weight, relation, bigger than, smaller than, to the right of, to the left of, over than, under than. Okay, stuff like that. All right. The other day, I wrote down a bunch of stuff on the board having to do with philosophy of mind. I gave some two options. I gave dualism on one side, which we're not talking about right now. And I gave monism, this idea that we are one thing, and that one thing is either physical or non-physical. And if that one thing is a physical thing, right, or non, this is the idealist, right? So you can be a physical monist as a philosopher of mind, and you have different views on this. You have reductive physical monism and non-reductive physical monism as a philosophy of mind. The other day I gave two. I gave behaviorism. I highly suggest you go back and watch this. And one is methodological behaviorism, and methodological behaviorism, and the other is philosophical behaviorism. I said that philosophical behaviorism is the one that I do not like. I do like methodological behaviorism as a practice for good psychology. Okay, you can make use of it in psychology and just common sense. Okay, get to know what's going on with a person by observing their behaviors. I disagree with the philosophical behaviors because they believe that the mind or the mental is nothing more than it is identical to the behavior. I am identical to physical things. Behaviors are physical things, therefore I'm identical to my behaviors. I gave specific instances of mental events called pain and said, from the philosophical behaviors position, the mental event of pain is identical to the physical behavioral event of screaming and shouting, ouch, and cussing and jumping up and down. But then I showed that's false, because if you could have pain without pain behavior, like a guy who gets hurt and just walks it off and doesn't tell anybody, doesn't exhibit pain behavior, right? He has pain, but he doesn't have pain behavior. You can also have the actor who has pain behavior, who's screaming and crying on the ground. Let's just take a professional NBA player who flops on the ground and pretends he got fouled and cries on the ground, right? LeBron James. What's that?
The GOAT.
Yeah, well, yeah, greatest crybaby of all time. Pretends on the ground that he's hurt, but he's not really hurt. He's just trying to draw a foul, right? Okay. Well, you don't think Jordan's the greatest of all time?
Better than LeBron.
Really?
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 Statistically.
So we can pull stats up.
Please do. I want to see.
You don't want to do that. Come on, I've had this.
Look, you can be right. I don't know about it. I'm just a Jordan fan, okay?
Gotcha.
Okay, some would argue that Kobe Bryant is. And I'd still refer back, and by the way, Chamberlain had a 100-point game. I mean, was it 100 point or 98 point?
Against like 7-year-olds.
7 years. No, this isn't pro ball. I mean, come on. All right, so here we go. So the philosophical behaviorist, I'm going to argue that you could have pain behavior without pain and pain without pain behavior. Thus, they are not identical. So philosophical behaviorism is false. Okay, well, you pull that up, I'll move on. Okay, keep going. But then you have another type of reductive physicalism, which we call type. And if you recall the type token distinction, okay, this is saying any mental event is identical to some pain event. Mental event is identical to some brain event. Okay? And you do the same thing. You ask the same question. Take the mental event, take the properties of the mental event, and then you ask the question, does it have the same properties as the brain event? Pain has properties such as sharpness, dullness. It's scaled, like on a 1 to 10. If you go into the hospital, they have the smiley frowny face scale, right? Has anybody seen that before? They always ask, what's your level of pain? And you point to it on the smiley to grimace crying face thing, right? Well, none of these properties of the mental event of pain are present with the physiological brain events. So, for example, I can't see your pain, but I could theoretically see your brain. I could see the C fiber nerves, okay, that are triggered during the pain event. I can hold those in my hand. Am I holding your pain? No, I'm not. I'm feeling those. Am I feeling your pain? No, I'm not. Brains and brain events are squishy. They're smelly. They're slick or not slick, right? They have weight. Pain has none of those. Mental events have no properties in common with brain events. Okay? From a third person, I could observe the brain event. As a first person, I cannot observe your pain. Mental events are first person only. I am not aware of your thoughts from a first person perspective. You can tell me your thoughts, and only then can I know your thoughts, but I'm still only as a second person or third person experiencing them. Okay? So type fails. Moreover, then I gave the example the other day of what's called Martian pain. We pretend that there's we use what are called the possible world scenarios. This is repetition from the other day. In possible worlds, we could, possible world is any world I could conceive of. An impossible world is a world I can't conceive of. I can conceive of a world where there are unicorns. I can conceive of a world where I'm the GOAT in basketball. Okay, I can conceive of it, pretend, and believe it or not, I have. As everybody has, right? Sitting there with the microphone. Afterwards, the lady's saying, so how do you do it? Well, you give her 110%, and whatever. I've done it with being a quarterback, especially a quarterback. I always thought I could be a really good quarterback. Yeah. Football. I'm a football guy. Yeah, you're a quarterback? Yeah, see, there you go. You know what I'm talking about. Except for you, and now you made it a lot farther than I ever made it. Okay? I think of being a great wrestler, a great, jiu-jitsu practitioner, right? Possible. Then you got the actual world, how the world really is. I'm not a quarterback, okay? Okay? So I don't get a chance to be, I'm not a basketball player, so I'm not, that's the actual. It's possible, but it's not actual, okay? And it's highly improbable. Okay, probability is another factor, but we're talking about possible worlds, actual worlds, and impossible worlds. A world with square circles is impossible, okay? A world where A could be non-A is impossible. Those are logical contradictions, okay? So, with possible worlds, we would ask the question, is it possible that can I conceive of a world where there are Martians who do not have the same brains and the same physical makeups as humans or other animals on Earth have, and still have pain? And yeah, I can imagine a world where there are things called Martians, entities called Martians, and they don't have C fiber firing events. They have a different kind of brain, and yet they still have pain, right? And if you could abstract the pain from the actual physical thing, then you could say it's not identical to it. If you could have conceptually, you could conceive that A could exist without B and B exists without A, they are not the same thing. Does that make sense? if you could conceive that the brain is different than the pain, and the pain, you could have pain without that brain, then they are two different things. Now let me go even farther. There were movies back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, probably more the 70s and 80s. And I think they were remade in the 90s and will be remade again. Freaky Friday was one. It's where a mom and a daughter change bodies, or a dad and the son change bodies. I can't remember. I know the concept. There was another movie called All of Me with Lily Tomlin and Steve Martin, where Lily Tomlin's body gets trapped in Steve Martin's body with him, and they're fighting over it. Okay, the concept that you could have a mind embodying another body. Okay, which we could talk about demon possession as well. But you could conceive of another mind in a different body, and if you could conceive of a different mind in a different body, not a different brain, but a different mind in a different body, different mind controlling the brain, then you know that the mind and the brain are two different things conceptually. Okay? That is not an impossible world. That is a possible world because you can conceive of it. Can you conceive of a brain being a different brain? No, because then that brain would not be identical to itself anymore. It'd be a different brain. Can you conceive of yourself being LeBron James? No, because you would no longer be yourself. You would no longer be yourself and LeBron James. Could you conceive of yourself having the same skills he has?
I'm not a hooper for real.
Well, it doesn't matter. You could. Okay? Hopefully you have better social skills. Okay?
Wait.
It's that whole Marxist thing again, okay? All right. Type. You're clearly not up on everybody bashing on LeBron lately, are you?
Oh, they hate on him. But
Not because of his skills. I can appreciate his skills.
I appreciate what he
Basketball skills, not political or
does. I
philosophical.
appreciate what he does off the court.
Now, if I go play basketball, he can rip on me all day about how stupid I look.
I appreciate.
But when
what
he
does.
starts talking philosophically and politically, he's entered my world. Now I get to talk about it.
I mean, he's done a lot off the court though, so.
Well, he's done some nice things. I think that's good. I think charity's good. But I also think some of the things he said are very harmful. Okay, philosophically. Okay. Let's go. The problem with this. Okay, we talked the other day about reduction. If A is identical to B and B is identical to C, then A is identical to C, right? If the mind is identical to the brain and the brain is identical to the atoms that make up the brain, then the mind's identical to the atoms. Atoms have no free will. Do you catch me on that? Atoms have no free will. If the mind is identical to the brain, if we're all physical, and the brain is made up of atoms, then none of us have free will. We're at the mercy of the laws of physics. That means any of your social justice, cries are in vain because we have no choice in the matter. Okay? You're crying because the laws of physics are causing you to cry. The haters are hating because the laws of physics are causing them to hate. They don't have a choice. They're not blameworthy. Okay? They will be blamed because you will have no option but to blame them, because the laws of physics will have your body utter sounds like, "We blame you." Okay? But blaming a complex physical object for doing something that it has no choice over, well, is worthless because they're not blameworthy. It's like blaming the camera for taking a picture. It had no choice in the matter. It just followed the laws of physics. Okay? No matter how complex it is, folks, you add a million parts to something, it doesn't give it free will. It just makes it have more parts. So anyway, type. They talk about Martian pain, and we say, if that's true, if the mental event of pain is not identical to the brain event, right, because of Martian pain, well then how do we keep it physical? Well, non-reductive shows that they can't reduce one-to-one like that. And so you have stuff like token. Remember, like I said, the type-token distinction? So it's not the type anymore, it's the token. Each token mental event is identical to its own brain event. All right? So Martian pain, whatever they have, we call pain. The problem with that is it doesn't really solve the problem. It just kind of kicks the can down the road, and it doesn't get rid of the idea of pain. What is it about pain that is pain? That if you put it on a different type of body and call that pain, it hurts. It hurts. You're all familiar with pain, are you not? You're all aware of thoughts, are you not? Of your self-awareness, of mental events, of anguish and emotions. And whatever brain event is associated with that is not identical to that because they have different properties. This is something you should write down. And you'll hear this in sociology a lot. Any statistics class, you should hear this. Correlation does not entail identity. Correlation does not entail identity. Just because two things are correlated, it does not mean they are the same thing. Correlation does not entail identity. Let me give you an example. Triangles have trilaterality and triangularity. Triangularity is not identical to trilaterality. Although when you get a triangle, every single time you get a triangle, and never will you not have this, every single time you have a triangle, you will have trilaterality and triangularity. They correlate 100% of the time you have triangles. But they are not identical. Correlation does not entail identity. Correlation also does not entail causation. Just because the two go together, it doesn't follow that one caused the other. Correlation does not entail causation. Just because they go together, it does not mean they caused each other. So one type is non-reductive physicalism, non-reductive physicalistic monism as a philosophy of mind. It's token. They try to solve the problem of Martian pain with that. It fails just because when you take the properties of one and line them up with the others, again, you see that they are not identical. Okay? And then when you use the possible world scenario of conceiving one without the other, you know that if A can exist without B and B can exist without A, that's called what kind of distinction? It's either a modal distinction or a real distinction. A real distinction says A can exist without B and B can exist without A. By the way, that is a test question that was already on a test. If not, if it wasn't, it will be. And it will be on the final. I can guarantee that. Okay? So if you could have a mental event without a brain event, then you could also, it also shows that they're not identical. Okay? All right. Let's go with another one. Let's go with functionalism. Functionalism is a non-reductive, physicalistic, monistic philosophy of mind that believes that the mental is identical, not equal, by the way. When I do this in philosophy, this is not equal. It's identical. Okay? 2 plus 3 equals 5. 6 minus 1 equals 5. But 2 plus 3 is not identical to 6 minus 1. They're different, right? In philosophy, this is identical. So mental events will be identical to functions. So the mental event of pain would turn out to be something akin to whatever pain function serves a function to get your hand off the hot stove, right? It turns the mental, humans, the mind, into nothing more than a complex computer that functions in a certain way to get a certain response, whatever that physical response may be. Let's take a calculator. Y'all know what a calculator is, right? Nowadays, it's part of your phone. In my day, you had to have your own calculator, and you didn't carry a phone. So, if you look at a calculator, what does your, let's just take your phone, for example, and assume that you're using your calculator function. Does your phone know math? Does your phone know math? The answer is no. The answer is no. Your phone does not know math. How does your phone do math? Well, there's a series of inputs and outputs. All right? You have a touch screen. Usually, I assume touch screens are operated through heat, right? They function through heat. You touch it, pressure and heat causes an electrical current to go down a certain pathway. You hit a plus button. Let's say you hit the 2 first. Then you hit the other part of the screen that has a picture of a plus, right? A little cross on there, right? And that creates another pathway. And then you hit, say, 3 again, and that adds or does something, takes away. Remember, 1s and 0s, that's the code, binary, right? On-off switches. It's like a little river of electricity. Then you hit equal, and it creates a light source that gives a shape, like this. Okay? Is the phone aware that that's the correct answer? No. If you look at a circuit board, has anybody opened up any kind of electronic device in their life? Boys are usually good at this. You buy them a toy. One of the first things they want to do is take it apart. Noah, have you ever had any toys that were electric growing up?
Yeah.
Did you ever take them apart?
Yes.
The answer is yes. I knew you knew that. You're a boy. I'm not saying girls wouldn't do it. I'm just saying boys do. Did you ever look at the circuit board on them? You ever see a circuit board before? Little green board with little lines on it?
I remember like my remote control car.
Yeah.
I took it off and it had that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so what happens with your remote control car?
Yeah.
You have this little box here, and one little thing goes this way and that way, and the other one goes this way and that way, right? Something like that, right? And it has a little antenna, and then you got your car, got the wheels here. I don't want to draw too good of a car because I don't have time. And so it's got some sort of a little radio wave, beep, 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 right? And as you push this forward, this thing will go this way, okay? Why does it do that? Because it gets a radio signal, which causes an electrical current. And if you open up the board in there, let's just say you got a board and it starts here, and there's a current that will go this way, and then you have certain pathways perhaps that it can go, Now I'm horrible at this. This is just, and depending on the on-off switch, it will either go this way or that way, the current that is, let's say. And then you have different options which make it do other things, okay? In computers, it's like that. Let's simplify it and do a river, okay? Let's say we want to dam a river. It's very similar. We're dealing with energy. Let's say we got a house here, and we want to dam the river. We don't want it destroying the house, and so the river's coming this way. So what we do is we put a levee here, and as the water comes, it makes the water go that way. And there's a house over here. We don't want to destroy this house, right? So we need to make this go over here. So as the water's coming this way, put another levee here, and it makes the water go this way. And let's just say we got a house here. We don't want to destroy that. So what we do is we put a levee here. It sends the water that way. Ah, dang it, there's a house here. Well, let's just get this water going right back down. Let's put another levy here, so once it hits that, boom, our water has just gone through the houses. They're just on-off switches. That's how computers work, okay? Now, am I drawing a circuit board? Any electrical engineer is going, oh my God, what the heck is he trying to do? That's worse than me trying to play basketball, okay? So, the concept's the same though in electronics and in computers. The levy is not saying, let's move the water. The water's not saying, let's move. It is following only the laws of physics. But it is functioning. Do you catch that? Now imagine a computer doing the same thing, but with electrical current and giving you the answer of 6. It's not really giving you the answer 6, it's just turning on a light shaped like that. That's the result, okay? Let's go with language. This is called the Chinese box thought experiment. Is the mental nothing more than a function like the levy or the computer or the, do I have something on my face for laughing? Or you just
No,
laughing
just-
like bad art?
Think about like Alexa.
A what?
Alexa.
Oh, Alexis. Alexis doesn't know crap. Alexis doesn't even speak. It creates sound waves, but there's no thought behind there. The only thought behind there is what's programmed for it to sound like. Does that make sense? You can't sit there and have I don't know if you've seen the cartoons where, like Family Guy, I think where Brian falls in love with Alexa.
Like
Yeah, he's having an affair. Oh no, and they did that on Big Bang Theory too, where one of them is like, I think Raj falls in love with his Alexa. So, all right.
what?
Let's so the Chinese room experiment goes something like this, or the Chinese box or whatever. You got a guy in here, you know, he's just smiling away. His job is to translate things for you. And you've got something you need translating. You don't know what it is. What's this thing? Okay? And it's a Chinese something. We'll make squiggle squaggles because I don't know anything about Chinese. All right? And it has a little number here on the bottom. We'll call it 1. And he takes this card or whatever with the symbols on it, and he hands it to the guy in the Chinese box. And the guy in the Chinese box takes that paper and he goes, number 1. And he goes over to a file, puts it in there, and takes out the number 1 from that. And then he hands it to the guy on the other side. And that Chinese word that was pronounced ni hao ends up saying hello. And it translated it. Did the guy in the box know Chinese? No, he did not. He functioned to translate it. Does the computer know math? No. It functions to give you a shape that you understand to be 6, like I had written on there, right? But it doesn't. And this raises what's called the problem of absent qualia. The problem of absent qualia. I'd write that down. The problem of absent qualia. Qualia, the other day, I defined as that mental stuff that we experience, whether it be visual, auditory, thoughtful, the things that go on in our mind, the things that we experience mentally. All right? First of all, the Chinese box at least has somebody in there. But the awareness of qualia, the awareness of what it means to have language is not there in the Chinese box. Okay? There is no qualia, awareness of things in computers. Alexis is not aware. of the things Alexis says. Okay? Alexis does not think about what to say. Alexis has no choice but to say it. Alexis is programmed. When you say this, Alexis will say that. Okay? Functionalism is the belief that we are nothing more, our mental lives are nothing more than functions. So pain is a function. Your thoughts are a function. The problem is that's false. It's false for two reasons. Because the Chinese room experiment shows that there is something absent in functionalism that is present in the mental life. Awareness of certain things. Awareness of what pain is. Awareness of the knowledge of language. Awareness of the first person position of belief, that you believe propositions. Alexis doesn't believe propositions. Okay? Alexis is nothing more than in-out. That's it. In-out commands.
You can ask her.
She's not a she. There is no Alexis. There's a name put on a brand of a type of machine. And what's going on internally is nothing more than electricity and circuits. There is no ghost in the machine. But there is with you, because you have awareness where she does not. And I call her a she metaphorically, not literally. Ironically, in our age of all this sexism where we go, how dare you assign, gender and stuff to humans and suggest certain things. They give this computer thing a name and call it a girl, right? And ironically, it is a name that is traditionally associated with women. How sexist is that, to say only women can have that name? Or that if you have that name, you're a woman for sure, certain, right? And certainly they give it a female sounding voice, as though all women sound like that. How sexist is that? Can't you have a woman with a deep voice or not? I don't know. So functionalism fails. Now there's a couple other problems with illustrations of why. Let me give you an example of a room with a couple boxes in it. I want to hurry up and get this done because I want to move on to dualism. I don't want to have too little time, and it's going to happen. I'm not going to have enough time, so might as well have fun with it. All right, so we got a bunch of balls here, and you got red balls, and you got green balls, okay? And let's say you got a person, let's see, we're going to call this the problem of reversed qualia. And remember, I told you qualia is that mentally experienced stuff. And so let's pretend there's a guy who sees green things that are green, and he sees them as though they are red. You catch me? He looks out and sees those trees, and the leaves that are green there he sees them as though they are the color red. He's grown up like this, and when his mom taught him colors, she pointed at leaves and said, "That's green." So he called the color he saw green, even though when he looked at it, it appeared red to him. Does that make sense? And when he saw red things, just like the green things, he saw them red like that. So when he saw green things, he saw them as red. And when he saw red things, that would be the color we would see as the green leaves, right? But his mom, when she taught him the color red, she pointed to things that she saw as red. And so when he saw that color, he started calling it red, even though when he saw it, it looked green to him. But he wouldn't call it green, because when he sees green things, he sees them as red, but he still calls them green. When he sees things that we see as red, he sees them differently. He sees them as green, right? But he still calls them what? He calls them red. He'll call the leaves on the tree green. He sees them differently. He'll see that red object over there that we see as red. He'll call it red, but he sees it differently. Okay, does that make sense? Is anybody confused on that? It's not that confusing, but I can make it confusing, trust me. So now I have an experiment, and I put out some red balls and some green balls. I got box 1 and I got box 2. I said, can you do me a favor and can you put all the red balls in box 1? Right? And he takes all the red balls and he puts them in box 1. Why does he do that? He functioned properly, didn't he? Because even though he sees it differently, even though he has different mental qualia than I have, a different mental experience than I have, he calls that mental experience the same thing I call it. Okay? And so he functions properly to get the red balls in. I say put the green ones in box 2. Now he sees them differently than I do, correct? But we call it the same thing, and he puts the green balls in box 2. Now a lot of you are going, why didn't he put them in the opposite? Why? Because you would think, because he sees them as opposite, but he has named them the same. Okay? It's called the problem of reverse qualia. The problem of reverse qualia is a problem for functionalism because it shows that you have different mental functions, the same mental function, or physical function, I should say, the same physical function, but different mental experiences. So going back, it suggests that the mental is not identical to a function, because you have different mental things, then you have the physical function of something. And if they are different, they're clearly not identical. So the mental is not identical to the function. A is identical to B if it has all the same properties that B has, and B has all the same properties that A has. It shows that they don't have the same properties. Thus, they are different. Does this make your mind tired? Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I had a whole class on this, and functionalism wasn't like 5 minutes. Functionalism was like weeks. Okay? I had a whole class on philosophy of mind, and then after that we did a whole class on consciousness. All right. There's also the problem, let's go back to Alexa, the problem of absent qualia. The fact that you can have the function without any mental events. You could have the physical function of something. So if the mental event is identical to a function, and you could have the function without the mental, it shows that they're not identical. Because if they're identical, you would always have to have the mental. You would always have to have qualia. But if you have the qualia without, if you have the qualia and the function, and then you have the function without the qualia, it shows that they are not identical. So you could have A without B and B without A. Again, it shows they are not identical. There's a distinction. That the function is at least a real distinction from the mental event. Because you could have the function without the mental event. All right, does that make sense to you? Said a lot. I'm going to give you one more. And it won't take long at all. It's called reductive materialism. And I could explain this a little more later, but it's by Paul and Patricia Churchland, and what they believe is we don't know how it reduces, but we know that it's physical, even if we don't know how. And so our goal is to get rid of all the what's called folk psychology. Folk psychology is language such as discussion of the mind or the soul or thoughts. Those are all words we use and they are non-scientific words, they say. But eventually, as science progresses, we will learn how to replace language of thought and mental and pain, and we will replace them with more technical, scientific, biological, chemical, and physical language. All right? And eventually, we will reduce all that language to materialistic language. Now, of course, that's not much of a theory, because they're not telling you, they're telling you there's a conclusion, everything is physical, and we will find out what it is, but we don't know it yet. So it's not much of a, it's a theory only in saying that it's physical, and just as time goes on, we'll find out how it works, but we're not there yet. Well, that's all fine and well, but until you get there, don't assume you've got that conclusion, okay? You don't start with conclusions, you end with them. All right? You start with evidence and you draw conclusions. So they don't give much in the way of evidence, they give much in the way of presuppositions. Their presupposition is this: everything is physical, the mind exists, therefore it must be physical. But this is a presupposition, not a conclusion from evidence. You have to prove that everything is physical. You can't just assume it, right? Prove to me that everything is physical. Anyway, so that right there is going to conclude what we talked about on the physical material monism, philosophical position of the mind. Next time we meet, we'll talk about dualism. Okay, I'll defend dualism. There are two types of it, and I'll defend one over the other. All right, and I think you'll appreciate why.